rapid pace out here early in the second. LeVert, hey, knocks it down. Rondo's on the run. Stops, hits Love. Love fires. Cavs reset with a fresh 14. Under 3 to go in the half. Garland works on Holiday. Lost it for a moment. Shovels to Mobley. Garland, step back three, drew a foul, knocks it down.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, journalists, you are listening live episode number 43 of the All Things Cleveland Cavaliers podcast. General Manager, Believe When Media, Brandon Lewis here, alongside the man that is all over Believe When Media, whether it's hosting Guardians of the COE, whether it's beat reporting on the Lake County campus, or running any other article, or doing anything else you can think of with Believe When Media, my main man, Joey Schneider.
Woo! Praise it, my brother. Don't forget, I will be, for the time being, starting next week with the man Clarence, who I'll be temporarily hosting Den of the Dogs. Craziness, lots of craziness going around. We got the Browns coming up. We got Cavs days.
Less than 60 days.
Less than 60 days.
Real basketball.
From real basketball. Man, got the Cleveland Guardians, first place of the AL Central right now. I mean, good things happening around Cleveland. Not involving the Browns. We're not going to talk about that. We're here to talk about some Cavaliers basketball. That's right. All things Cavaliers, baby. Brandon, my brother. Preseason schedule came out.
It did. We have 4 games officially scheduled for the Cleveland Cavaliers in October of 2022. Starting it off Wednesday, October 5th. Mark your calendars. Wells Fargo Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, taking on Joel Embiid, James Harden, and the Philadelphia 76ers. Then 4 days later, the Sixers will come to Cleveland on Monday, October 10th to play a game. 2 days later, then Atlanta with Trae Young, of course, beat us in the last game of the Cavaliers regular season, will come here on Wednesday, October 12th. And the Cavs finish it Friday, October 14th in Orlando, taking a trip down to the Sunshine State. Before then, that would be, either 4 or 5 days later, October 18th, October 19th, will be the official start of the 2022-2023 NBA season. It is almost here. Training camp is right around the corner. Preseason schedule just got announced. Reports are out there that the regular season schedule will be announced next week. We're almost here, Joey. We just got to get through it.
We have one more week. And, we got some stuff to talk about this week, but, that makes me extremely happy. I kind of feel this schedule, though. I kind of feel like the schedule is mocking us a little bit because Philly, there were so many times we had to beat Philly last season and to get to the second seed at that time, and we couldn't get over that hump. And then Atlanta took us out in the play-in game, and then Orlando's here. We'll just give you one.
Yeah, and of course that was way late in the season. If you heard, we went down to Orlando, and of course we didn't play Philly last year. We played them 4 times in the span of 2 months, and then Atlanta we saw, of course, various times throughout the season. We saw them way down to Atlanta, and then, as you mentioned, they came here for the play-in tournament game, which the Cavs had control of in the first half, and of course we all know how the rest of that game went out. The Cavs are looking for preseason revenge, though, if there is such thing as preseason revenge, getting that revenge early, so then, you know what, in a way, the Cavs can feel good and, win, lose, or draw. As long as everybody plays well, nobody gets hurt, we can get going, we can get into this season, and we can really see the true potential of this Cavs team that we have been talking about since the end of the regular season.
So let me ask you this question, because I know how much you hate summer league ball.
Yes.
Do you feel the same way about preseason, or do you look at that more as a better gauge of where the team's at going into the full season?
So I think in a way I don't like it.
Still?
Yeah, I mean, I really don't. I think it's a little bit of a better gauge, but I also think it's hard because really, guys are trying to get in a basketball shape. a lot of these guys, the Cavs, though, I will say this, the Cavs have an advantage because the Cavs didn't make any significant, big overall changes to the roster. So they played together. I think the biggest thing with preseason, it's obviously different in every other sport, like football. There's obviously only two. Most of the guys don't play. Baseball, they're playing for a couple weeks. The pitchers and catchers are trying to get their arms back together. Whereas I mentioned with basketball, you're really just trying to get into shape. But I still don't think, teams really don't try as hard. I don't think, guys are going full throttle. Guys aren't really trying to run their set. I think the one thing that you will look for, especially out of this Cavs team, is, kind of in that second and, if you will, third unit, some of these young guys that are going to get a chance to play, like our rookie Abaji, Luke Travers, Isaiah Mobley, of course, we drafted in the second round. A guy like a Dean Wade or Lamar Stevens. These players that were contributors last year, but maybe may not be as much contributors because of the depth of the roster this year. Maybe they find their way onto the court because of how well they played in the preseason. I think that's kind of your number one thing that you have to look at when it comes to these 4 games. If Garland struggles on the field, or Allen or Mobley or any of our top guys, I'm really not going to be worried about it until we get into playing the 82-game set come about mid-October.
Do we even know if Travers is going to make the team?
Well, that's what I'm saying. This is an opportunity because I have an article that will be already up by the time that this podcast goes up live tonight, basically breaking down the Cavs roster without Collin Sexton, which we will get to hashtag Sexton Watch in a little bit. But currently, even without Sexton on the roster, and by the way, I am including Ricky Rubio as a part of the roster, even though he is hurt, the Cavs have 18 people currently on the roster. As we know, an NBA roster can only have 15 people at a time. And that even includes, if you send 2 down to the G League, we know 13 can dress only, but 15 have to be on the roster. So there's going to be, I think a battle with Travers and Isaiah Mobley and these, maybe even potentially Lamar Stevens, indeed, if Sexton does come back or whatnot, to try to fill one of these last roster spots. Because as we talked about last week, this team is one of the deepest teams in the NBA. They can easily go 10 deep. You can make an argument to me there are 12 locks on this team. And I think, the final 3 will have to battle it out for preseason purposes. But that is a good point. I don't know if Travers is going to make the team, but I think we're going to find out here in preseason. I think if he plays well, he has a shot, because reports were coming out of the summer league that, him and Mobley did play well. They didn't look lost in the court. They looked like they could be legitimate players.
Right. It's just a matter of, do we have the room on the team for them?
Yeah, and that's the thing. So in my article that you guys are going to see, I kind of broke down the Cavs roster in 2 ways. I broke it down one way by doing it by position, basically, which would be, your point guard, obviously, and then the shooting guard, small forward, and then your bigs. So 3 categories there. And then I also broke it down by, as I said, locks, and then like on the bubble guys. So in my mind, Joey, and you can feel free to disagree with me if you want, but there are, in my opinion, 12 locks currently on this Cavs roster. DG, Rubio, NATO for the time being, obviously, because he's going to back up Garland, Marketing, Mobley, Allen, Love, Robin Lopez, Karis LeVert, Okoro, Abaji, and Dean Wade.
I agree with you on all 12 of those. I could make an argument Lamar Stevens should probably be a lock too.
Well, and I said Stevens is probably as close to a lock as possible. However, if Sexton does come back, I think if you would have Sexton, NATO, Rubio, LeVert, Okoro, Abaji, there may not be room for Stevens in terms of just numbers. And I think it would come down to probably a Stevens versus Wade battle. And I'd probably favor Wade a little bit just because they did sign him to that offer sheet. And he's a little bit of a bigger guy. Then again, we talked about the Cavs need wings,
and Lamar Stevens can play the wing. And That's why I think there might only be one spot, you know.
You could certainly make an argument for that. And by the way, and as I wrote in the article, obviously Jetty Osman, Dylan Windler are still on the team for now, but we don't expect them to make the roster. And if we're talking about potentially Stevens and Wade both making the roster, that would be 13, 14 guys right there, and so the Cavs made these draft picks, and we talked about this, way back in the spring. There may not be room for, one of these guys they drafted, even if they do have, good potential. The Cavs may have to let them go because there's just no roster room, especially, now if we take a look at Sexton, we, probably going to sign that qualifying offer according to reports. So you can almost safely assume he's going to be in the fold somehow. And it is a log jam, at the 2 and the 3 spots that I think are going to be figured out as the season goes on. Who contributes, who plays best in the starting role, who plays off the bench. And the Cavs are going to have to find that out in real game situations. And it may not be, the first 4 preseason games. It may not be even the first month of the regular season game. They're going to have to, kind of, to use a baseball term, platoon these guys, maybe in certain situations, as you've talked about with certain matchups, to see really who are the best 5 players on the court to play together at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see, especially as preseason goes on. And a lot of those players are probably going to get some playing time, and we're going to get to see who maybe get that last 1 or 2 spots left on the roster. But switching gears here just for a moment, the Cavs on ESPN received 1 vote to win the East. I don't know who the vote came from. Whoever it was is a hero. So let's just go down this list real quick. The Cavs and the Raptors each received 1 point. The Miami Heat, so they were tied at 5. The Miami Heat at number 4 had 19 points or 10.5%. The Philadelphia 76ers, 28 points. The Milwaukee Bucks, 55 points, and the Boston Celtics, 67 points. So I kind of agree with that a little bit. Milwaukee's going to be healthy this year, going into the season. You never know what kind of injuries are going to happen to a team, especially a team that relies very heavily on, their top 3 guys, which is, Giannis, Jrue Holiday, and Chris Middleton. They obviously have some guys that could back them up. But you saw last year a couple injuries, and that kind of derailed them. Celtics are extremely deep, very much like the Cavs, and have some bona fide stars on that team. Sixers are always going to be in it when Embiid is on the floor. Still got James Harden. How he's going to play is going to determine how well the Sixers go. Heat haven't made any changes. Still going to be a really good team. Cavs, Raptors, kind of the same way. Just kind of want to touch on that a little bit. I don't think anyone here is expecting the Cleveland Cavaliers to win the East. I think that they are still maybe another 1 or 2 years away from it. I definitely think they're going to make the playoffs this year, unless something goes horribly sideways, and knock on wood. And I am legitimately knocking on wood right now that is not going to happen. But this is, we do have a very deep team, a very young team, emerging superstars, which does lead me into my question for you, Mr. Lewis. Now, before we came on the podcast, we had a couple of things that we wanted to talk about. The preseason schedule being one, talking about, the votes for who's going to win the East being number 2, but everything else, we just kind of want to wing it today a little bit on ATC. So my question for you is this: what is going to be more important to the Cavs' success this season? You have 3 choices. Darius Garland becoming a superstar.
Okay.
I'm gonna say right now, Darius Garland, he is an all-star. He is a borderline star. His next jump is a superstar. He was just ranked, I believe, the 9th best point guard in the league, which is, I'd say, fair. There's a lot of really,
right. Yep.
really good point guards. Collin Sexton re-signing and putting up the numbers he did 2 years ago, 25 points per game, playing good defense, getting to the basket. or Evan Mobley taking the next step and himself becoming an all-star and maybe better?
That is a really good question. It's a really good question. Because I thought you were going to say make the second round of the playoffs. I thought that was going to be one of your options.
No.
So, okay, Garland becoming a superstar, Sexton coming back and putting up the numbers he did 2 years ago, or Mobley taking the next step. Well, you know what? I'm going to say Mobley taking the next step. And the reason why I say that is because I think Mobley taking the next step will be because or will benefit also Garland taking the next step and becoming a superstar. I think that can work hand in hand because Garland is going to be the one, I think, giving Mobley a lot of the touches and a lot of the basketball. And, Evan Mobley, there were some games last year where you can make an argument he was the most dominating presence on the court at times. But as we talked about a lot of times as well, there were moments where Mobley was not as aggressive getting rebounds. He was not aggressive going a lot on his jump shot. I know you have compared Mobley a lot to a more athletic Tim Duncan,
which I am going to actually, as soon as you know the answer here, we're going to talk about that a little bit.
All right. Well, which, by the way, I do concur and I agree with. I've seen a lot of comparisons with Kevin Garnett as well. I think Evan Mobley, and I said it at the time when the Cavs drafted them, I've said it all throughout this ATC podcast, I will continue to stick to my guns. In that draft, that of course involves Scotty Barnes, Cade Cunningham, Jalen Green, I still say Evan Mobley was, in my opinion, the best draft. If I was a GM, I would have taken him number 1 overall in that draft. I didn't care what Detroit needed. I thought Mobley was the best player on the board. I still agree with that. I think this dude is going to be a monster. And if he becomes a monster in today's NBA, where there is a ton of small ball, and yes, we do have more skilled bigs in today's game, but you don't really have what the Cavs have with a great defensive center in Jared Allen, who can also score the basketball at times. If you have Evan Mobley take that next step, even with Darius Garland where he is now, that is a scary proposition for defenses. And I actually think we're going to see it this year. I think Mobley knows what he needs to work on. We're going to see without a doubt, all-star Evan Mobley this year, just not participating in the skills challenge because it was in Cleveland and they needed a team Cleveland.
So that kind of leads us into the next topic. And you guys are going to be able to read all about this in my upcoming article on Evan Mobley. It'll be up sometime in the next week. As everyone knows, I am a very busy man. I am all over the place here for Believe the Media. I will be co-hosting the Dogs with Clarence Wilson. I just guest hosted with Melanie Kirby on Guardians of the CLE. Make sure you guys check out the latest episode. I am the beat reporter for the Lake County Captains. So I am all over the place right now, Brandon, but it never distracts me from my number 1 love, which is all things Cavaliers. But you guys will be able to read my article here the next week. I am a big Evan Mobley fan. I agree with you 100%. I don't care what needs are Evan Mobley. And they've done this redraft of last year's, and everyone's still taking Cade Cunningham 1. Evan Mobley,
which I don't understand at all.
Cade Cunningham is going to become a very good player in the NBA. But Evan Mobley, and I'm going to use this term again, probably for maybe the 10th podcast in a row, he is going to be a generational talent. So I kind of just want to get to this article. I shouldn't say article, but a lot of people have talked about it. Evan Mobley has been working his butt off this offseason. If you haven't had a chance to see what he's done, he's worked out with Kevin Durant. He's worked out with other star players in the league. He's trying to better himself, not just as a big man, but also as a ball handler, as a shooter, being more aggressive, getting to the rim, learning new moves, becoming a 3-level scorer. I mean, 7 foot tall, can jump out of the building. So he went to a guard, basically a guard camp. And the man, his name is Olin. I've heard of him. I can never pronounce his name. Olin Simplis. He is known as the guard whisperer. I don't know for what, but he's worked with KD, he's worked with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and the players go on and on and on and on. And he said that he believes Evan Mobley, these are his words, is a hybrid of Giannis Antetokounmpo and Kevin Garnett.
I saw that.
That is the amount of if you have a player who is a hybrid of Giannis and KG, you're basically putting them in the Hall of Fame right now. I'll never put a player who's only played 1 year in the NBA in the Hall of Fame, but I'll say that is ridiculous high praise. And if Mobley is going towards that more than an athletic Tim Duncan, then Mobley is going to be able to play basically. I'm not going to say he's going to be able to play 2, but he could play 3, he could play 4, he could play 5. He could be all over the court. I mean, you can tell this offseason Mobley is putting in as much work as he possibly can because he knows where he wants to be. He knows where this team wants him to be, where he wants to take this team. It's showing leadership. It's showing the dedication that he has to getting better. That is scary. That is scary to think about. And I'm not saying like other teams, should be scared. I mean, they should if it becomes true. But to have a guy who's very well respected, who has worked with the best of the best, tell the press that the guy he's working with, Evan Mobley, the 3rd pick in the draft from last year that was taken by the Cleveland Cavaliers, looks like a hybrid of Giannis and KG. Holy God, I am very excited for this season to see him play.
May I add, he's already got a better shot, I would say, than Giannis and KG, especially when they both first came in the league. I mean, neither of those guys could really hit a 3, and Mobley's already doing, not as consistently as we would like. But as we talked about, in today's game, he's a stretch 4. Occasionally he's played the 5. You mentioned he could slide down to the 3 if he wanted to. The dude is just he's an athlete. He is the definition of today's NBA, which is versatile, positionless players that can be all over the court, that have a guard-like handles as a big, that has good range shooting, that is very athletic defensively. He plays defense, which is a rarity in today's NBA. He can test shots. He's active. He never takes a game off. And so this dude, as long as he stays healthy, which he's already had a little bit of injuries, which concerns me a little bit, obviously, for his size and his frame. But as long as he stays healthy, I think this guy is a different generational talent. And if you had him with Darius Garland as just a combo, throw in Jared Allen and, whatever else the Cavs have supporting him, that team is a scary team, and they are going to be a hard out. I'm not saying they're a championship contender yet, but they're going to be a hard out for whoever they face if what we're talking about comes to fruition next spring.
And it's really crazy to me that you're like, just throw in Jared Allen, because you're like, we'll just throw in an all-star center.
Yeah.
Who I believe when Jared Allen is playing his absolute best, I think Jared Allen is the 2nd best center in the East.
And I concur with that.
Next to Joel Embiid. Jared Allen is going to always get you Jared Allen numbers. And as each year passes, he just gets better and better with what he does. He protects the rim, he gets you rebounds, and he scores under the hoop. You might see him take a jumper from time to time, but his basketball IQ is ridiculously high, because he will only take a jumper if he is 100% sure that he is going to make it. Yep. That's why he has 70-75% field goal percentage every single game. So you have Mobley, who, and I think that was a very smart move by Mobley, going to a guard camp, because a lot of times last season we saw Mobley dribbling too much and he got the ball stolen from him. And he just wasn't protecting the ball well. If he's learning to protect the ball more, get a quicker first step, that is just scary. That is 7 feet of a guy who can fly.
Good.
On top of working on that 3-level scoring, on top of the fact that he's even, and I don't, this was maybe a week or two ago, we just didn't talk about it. There's a lot of people around the league who think that he could be in the running for defensive player of the year.
Yeah.
Where does, he has to put it all together. We can talk about it all day. Oh, he's done this, he's done that. People have said this, people have said that. But if he does put it all together, you are talking about someone who could potentially become one of the top 3 players in the NBA within the next 2 to 3 years.
Could you imagine him bring the ball up? Let's say Darius Garland on the bench, or maybe they want Mobley bring the ball up, and you have a Mobley, Jared Allen pick and roll.
Oh my God! I can't imagine that they would let him do that. But if it did, that would just be. I mean, you could even throw marketing in there too, because marketing could throw it out some ferocious dunks too. But Mobley is just, I think, I asked that question. I think I agree. Mobley is the piece that if he improves a lot from last year to this year, and I think he's going to, that is going to push the Cavs over the hump, not only into the playoffs, but deep into the playoffs, because I don't know if you can guard a 7-footer who has improved his skills that dramatically with just one person. You're going to have to double team him, which is going to leave somebody open. And as you alluded to earlier in this podcast, the Cavs are just very deep. LeVert, Agbaji, and and we don't know how Agbaji is going to play. We don't know. That's an unknown. We don't know if Agbaji is going to be a 6th man. We don't know if he's going to emerge as a starter.
Yeah.
There is that's another one of those unknown question marks is what if Agbaji at 20, we know he's 22. So he's one of the older players. He was one of the older players drafted, 4 years at Kansas, but he's a winner. He improves every single year. He's a proven winner. He won a championship at Kansas. He's a leader. He knows, he's coming in. This is his first year. But we don't know if he's going to be the 6th, 7th, 8th option off the bench, or if he's going to emerge as a starter and maybe even an all-star down the line. We don't know. That's another topic for another day.
So just real quick, this is my best guess with Agbaji, and I wrote about this a little bit in the article. I think we both expect game 1 he's not going to start. I think, he's going to be coming off the bench. I think he's going to be used, though, very early on in the season. And if LeVert and or Okoro are struggling producing from the field, and Agbaji is producing off the bench, I do think that there is that possibility of Agbaji eventually in the middle of the season moving into that starting lineup.
And especially if you take a look at his summer league. I know you hate summer league. It doesn't mean anything. And in a lot of ways, I do agree with you, but it is still fun to watch for me. Any basketball is fun to watch. I love watching the WNBA. I love watching the regular NBA. I love high school, college basketball, everything. Basketball is just a fun sport to watch, just like football and baseball. I also love watching softball as well. But excuse me, there's my one. I got some coming. Yeah. But Agbaji is just it's going to be very interesting to see because he was just nailing, I think 50% of his threes in the summer league, and he was playing great D. If he turns into a really good 3 and D, he's going to be starting, and that's what an option.
Yeah.
Mobley, Allen underneath, Garland bringing it up. We don't know if Sexton's coming back, but we're gonna be talking about that here in the next about 30 seconds. And Agbaji being able to stand there at the 3 and just knock down the threes if he's left open. I mean, that's just. And on top of that, he's great in transition, and we know that the Cavs love to run the ball. That was a big thing that they did last year, was try to get into transition. But going back to what I just said about 28 seconds ago. Hashtag Sexton watch. Collin Sexton, Brandon. We are hearing reports. A lot of sources are saying that it looks like he will be playing on his qualifying offer We did talk about this before the show, and I kind of want to hear a lot of the people who listen to the show what you guys think. The Cavs have $13 million in cap space right now. That's all they have before they would go over the luxury tax. And they offered all of it to Collin Sexton. 3 years, $40 million. They tried to give him every last cent that they had. Obviously, he feels that he is a starting number 2. He is worth $20 million plus a year, especially when you have Rich Paul in your ear saying you are worth $20 million plus a year, and the NBA is saying you are not worth $20 million plus a year. I don't know who to believe in this situation. I like Sexton. This is one of the few things me and you kind of disagree about a lot on, is you don't view him as, where I view him as. I think that he's a very good player who would really add another dimension to this team. But as you've stated, there's a lot of roster spots open. I should say there's not a lot of roster spots open. There's a lot of good players on this team, very deep. But Sexton, 2 years ago, before he got hurt, was averaging 25 points a game. And, the 11 games we saw him in last year, he was playing good defense. He was getting to the rim, looked at about as athletic as I've ever seen him look. So, and Darius Garland has even stated he wants Sexton next to him. Who knows if that dynamic would work, but it looks like he might be staying on his qualifying offer. There's no other teams right now that are offering anything, that are offering him money. It looks like the Cavs are his only choice. I don't think that this is a Cavs thing right now. I think this is a Collin Sexton thing, waiting to see if someone offers him more money. The Cavs have, said we are giving you every last cent we have available for this year, but you can also just play on the qualifying offer, and it looks like that's what he is going to do. But until it is signed, we are still going to have to talk about it. And what are your thoughts?
Collin Sexton. Oh, Joey, how many times have we had to talk about this since the end of April? Sexton, is he going to sign? Is he not going to sign? Where's he going to go? Is he going to get $20 million? Is he going to qualify offer? Yes. Is he going to sign it? The one thing that I don't want this to do is go into training camp, go into preseason, go into the start of the regular season, and have it be a distraction to the team. And have it be a distraction to the coaching staff, because the coaching staff today literally needs to start putting in place a plan for how they're going to use everybody, because as we saw at the end of last year, we had so many injuries, we had so many guys going in and out of the lineup. Nobody knew their defined role, and how many times have we talked about that as well? Listen, I've said for months and months and months, Collin Sexton is a very talented basketball player, and as you said, I think that him and Rich Paul view him as a starting shooting guard. And, we have debated this back and forth about what do the Cavs view him, because there have been numerous reports about the Cavs view him as a potential starting guard. And there's also been numerous reports about, no, that's not true. The Cavs view him as a sixth man. So until he's on the team, until we see games, until we see what this team looks like, I don't think that they really know what they want to do with him. I just think that they know the talent they have, because they've seen him since 2018. There's a reason why he was drafted number 8 overall in that draft. They know him. They know what his rehab is like more than any other team in the NBA. And so I think Sexton just wants security, but I think he wants to know that there's going to be a clear-cut spot for him. And part of it, maybe he looks at this roster like we talked about, and he sees that they brought in a player like a Karis LeVert, like we drafted a player like a Baji. And maybe he's worried his playing time might be cut. I don't know. Maybe that's looking too much into the situation. But, yeah, I mean, I've been very vocal about, I think he would be the perfect sixth man on this team. I think putting him and Ricky Rubio, when Rubio gets back together in the backcourt, would be just great. You could even, market it and love coming off the bench with Robin Lopez as well. That'd be a really good, solid, in my opinion, bench unit for this team. But it almost feels like that we are beating a dead horse, because reports are not, I don't want to say accurate, but they don't feel totally true either, because nobody really knows what's going on. And
Right.
so we're almost making an educated guess in a way, but it's almost safe to assume that he's going to be back, because the one constant has been since the start of July, nobody is offering him a contract, and it just feels like he's sitting there. I don't know if he thinks the Cavs are going to offer him, or some other team's going to offer him more money, that the Cavs literally cannot do that. Like, I don't know what the thought is. Like, the Cavs gave him the best deal out there. Why not just sign it? What's the wait, I guess, is my question.
Well, because if he signs his qualifying offer and he, plays a hell of a season, then maybe next year the Cavs are going to offer him more, or another team's going to offer him more. But here is where I'm going to play. I like Sexton. I kind of think they would probably start Sexton. I think it'd be hard not to, considering we know what he could do scoring wise. But here's the other side of the coin. Let's say you start Sexton, okay? Let's say they keep the three bigs from last year, and Markkanen, who we don't talk nearly enough about, starts at 3. That means that you have LeVert, Okoro, and Agbaji coming off the bench.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't think those three can play together at the same time. Do you?
Yes. I think that no. I don't think you can play those three at the same time, because who would you? No, I don't think none of them could play point guard.
LeVert would probably be your point guard by trade, I guess, right?
Yeah, I would probably say LeVert would probably be the one having to bring the ball up, but I don't think that he can handle the ball nearly as well. Well, I just don't think that you'd have Neto or.
And then what do you do when Rubio gets back? I mean,
well, right, but none of those three can play 4 either. The only way you would bring them in would be if you're going on a real small ball lineup. It would be like, it would probably be like Garland or Neto, and then those three, and then whoever you put in at center. But I mean, it's just Sexton coming in is could potentially throw off a lot, and there's just guys that we don't talk about when we're talking about this roster. We don't talk about Kevin Love nearly as much. We don't talk about Lauri Markkanen, who started last year. For sure. I mean, is he still going to be a starter? That's just, this roster is so crazy right now. And until we get some answers, when training camp starts, I'm sure we'll be getting some answers. I'm sure that we'll know more. But right now, we're just speculating on a lot of stuff. We're talking about DG. We're talking about Evan Mobley. Is Sexton going to sign? It feels like we're talking about a lot of the same stuff, but it's important, because I am so curious how they're going to construct the starting lineup. And as me and you have said all throughout last year, this team almost doesn't feel like it has a starting roster. Yep. Because they rotate guys in so often. And until they got hurt last year, that was kind of when that stopped, towards the end of the season, when unfortunately they lost, the playoff spot. But it just feels like with the roster they have now, they're building it so that cannot happen. So if you get an injury or two, they are not going to, they're going to be able to keep winning games with who they have.
For the record, I did the research for my article breaking down the roster. When Markkanen, Mobley, and Allen all started last year, the Cavs' record was 22-14. I actually thought it was going to be a little bit better. It kind of felt, but actually, take a look at it. They were, and you can talk about this, where you think that, some team maybe have figured out that Markkanen isn't the greatest defender, because that record, it started off like 19-10, and they finished 3-5 or something along those lines of that. Now, some of that was obviously Darius Garland being out. He missed a lot of time with that. So really, the hardest part with the Cavs is there's no concrete data that says this is the best lineup we have.
Right.
In my opinion.
Exactly. And the other thing I take into account is, how many games did Kevin Love come in and just absolutely give them the biggest boost off the bench?
Well, not that, but there were a lot of, especially later in the season, where they would start off slow. How many did we talk about? It was Love, and some nights it was Osman keeping them in the ball game until, Darius Garland, who would end up with 35, but he'd only have 10 in the first half.
Right. And, but Osman just fell off the face of the planet in that second half of the season.
Literally really the last month. I mean, he was in the rotation until about the All-Star break, and then when LeVert came in and all that happened, it kind of felt like, Osman still, again, technically under contract, as we talked about. He's actually the one true wing the Cavs have, but there is, unless there is some miracle roster construction, it feels like Jetty Osman, Dylan Windler, some of these guys won't be on the team, but it's an exciting time to be a Cavs fan, folks. I think that maybe, people that follow the Cavs, I think understand, but maybe, the casual Cavs fans here do not realize when you look on paper here, you could make the argument the Cavs are one of, if not the deepest team in the NBA with the amount of talent that they have. And that will only be, I guess, amplified by if Collin Sexton, the first round pick out of Alabama, returns to the team.
And this will be my last point here before I think it's time for us to wrap it up. But let's say Sexton comes back. You have Darius Garland, all-star, borderline superstar. You have Collin Sexton, borderline all-star. You have Evan Mobley, who I think is going to take a huge leap this year, who I think is going to be an all-star, might even turn into a star by the end of the season. Jarrett Allen, all-star. LeVert fringe all-star. Kevin Love, going to be a Hall of Famer, still off the bench putting up amazing numbers. I mean, how deep? And I could keep going, but I'm not. But like you said, this team is super deep. But not only are they super deep, by the end of the season, this Cavs team could be one of the best teams in all the NBA.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
If the stars align. I'm not saying they're going to, but if everything happens the way that we've talked about, if DG takes a next step in superstardom, if Evan Mobley becomes a generational talent, if Collin Sexton plays like how Collin Sexton views himself to play, if Jarrett Allen stays an all-star, if everyone off the bench comes off playing like a sixth man of the year, if Kevin Love can keep his production, if all the stars align, the Cavs are going to be one of the most dangerous teams in the NBA.
If that happens, I think the Cavs, I will say this, I think the Cavs will have a top 2 seed in the East. I think they would be right. If all that happens, I'm still not going to put them over Milwaukee just because I think Milwaukee has the best player in basketball right now in Giannis Antetokounmpo. They're bringing back Chris Middleton. We saw what they did even without Middleton, taking the Eastern Conference champions, Boston Celtics 2-7 games. So I won't put them over Milwaukee yet. But I think it definitely moves the needle, and I think they'd be right there. I would take them over Philly at that point if all the stars align. I think that they would be just a little bit better than Boston at that point if all the stars align. And as you know, my hatred for the Miami Heat continues.
Right. And I don't want people to think that we're going, oh, the Cavs are going to be the best team. No,
we're not saying that.
We're saying if everything went right, if everyone took that next step, that, if all, like we said, if all the stars align, everyone took that next step to where we think that they are going, but they did it this year, we think the Cavs would be one of the best teams in the NBA. Not saying it's going to happen. If one or two of those things happen, easily in the playoffs, easily.
Well, by the way, it's not out of the realm of possibilities, all those things. That it's not a crazy theory to think.
No.
So, I mean, out of all the things that are going on in Cleveland, and I have no idea how this man sitting next to my wife in my Zoom window has any time to record a podcast with everything he's going on this week. He's got the Guardians. He is all over the place. But the fact of the matter is, we are so excited to get this Cavs season underway. We are less than 60 days away from real Cavs basketball, which means we are just about 2 months away from the start of the 2022-2023 NBA regular season.
I will say in 4 weeks, Brandon, you will have to have yourself a guest host, as I will be in Hawaii, and I will not be talking anything sports with anyone. I will be swimming with the sharks and drinking on the beach. So unfortunately, you will have yourself I shouldn't say unfortunately. You're going to have an amazing guest host. We don't know who it's going to be yet. But I cannot wait for my vacation. Number one, I think it's well. I think it's well earned. And number two, I cannot wait for the. I know I can't remember what it's called, but basically the pinnacle of all sports fandom when the NBA, the MLB, and the NFL are all going on at the same time.
October Madness, pretty much.
That is going. That I cannot wait.
You got the MLB playoffs, the NFL regular season in full tilt, and the start of the NBA and the NHL for that matter.
Oh yeah. Oh man.
That's AHL. Check out our great writer Judge Hunger's content on the Lakers Monsters and the Columbus Blue Jackets. We're just sending that shout out to everybody today at Believer in Media.
We're all about love. Everyone's getting a shout out. Clarence, Ruben, Kevin, Mel, Brandon, the other Brandon, Brandon Larador.
Brandon Larador, Alex Sabano, of course, writes Ohio State articles for us as well. As their season's going to kick off here. So
Dean and Mike from the Pile Driver podcast. Guys, check out everything that we have to offer at Believe the Media. Really good stuff. Again, if you haven't checked out Guardians of the CLE from yesterday, it actually will be 2 days ago as when this comes out. Check it out. We had a great guest. Extremely informative podcast. Really, really good. And Brandon, a lot of love. You know, I love you, brother. Only one thing left to do.
Let 'em know.